What's up, YouTube? This is Morgan from the Chompcast and Sword Chomp, introducing my brand new channel, Morgan's Madness. I'm really excited about this as a way to just vent therapeutically, get a lot of this stuff, video game and life and nerd related, off of my chest. And for people that are just checking out this video for the first time, a lot of people that have been following the Chompcast and Sword Chomp in various social media outlets have requested that we do more video content. So this is a way to both get some therapy for me and also branch out and do some video content. So I'm excited to see where this goes. But yeah, this is a brand new channel, Morgan's Madness. I'll try to do maybe one or two of these a week, depending on if people are enjoying them a lot or not. But it's going to be a lot of fun. As you can see, I've decked out my podcasting room here. I think it looks pretty cool. I got the Pokemon in there. I got a nice Sword Chomp placard back on the wall. Got some new lighting. So I'm excited to actually, it used to be all dark and dingy and creepy in here, and no one wants to see that. So, but we'll just see how it goes. It should be a lot of fun. You might see me drinking a lot of these in the future. These disgusting products that I love. Diet, caffeine-free Dr. Pepper. And I have to drink it because I have an anxiety disorder and I can't have caffeine, and I've just always liked diet soda. I know that sounds weird, but I just have. It will fuel this YouTube channel. So a couple topics on the docket. I almost said top docket that I wanted to talk about today. First and foremost, Game of Thrones has been on my mind a lot lately. So season 7 is coming to a close. And Game of Thrones, people always ask me like what my biggest nerddom is, and I always tell them it's definitely Game of Thrones. When I first discovered the books, it was right after the Dance with Dragons came out, and I had a job at the time where I worked in like a really shitty call center, and it was really quiet. Like you take like maybe 20 or 30 calls a day, so there was a lot of downtime, and that's when I just started trying to read every book that I always wanted to read my whole life that I never had time to read, and just sort of I read everything I'd ever wanted to read. And then I stumbled across this Game of Thrones series that everyone was talking about, and I just fell in love with it. It was like every day I would walk to work holding those books, and it was like I had a magical world in my hands. And like I know most people say that about books, but I had never personally been affected by literature in this way. It just really spoke to me. So I fell in love with it. I became obsessed with it. I read the book several times, and I started like digging into like the Wikipedia, the Ice and Fire, and like all the, there's so much depth and layers to the story that you can read those books 2 or 3 times and learn new things, and all the fan theories, like the Jon Snow theory that's now come to the open. And fair warning, if you are way behind on Game of Thrones, this might not be the best YouTube channel for you right now, because I might have some spoilers in there. But long story short, I of course got into the TV show, and it's been mostly great. I'm caught up in the wave that Game of Thrones has kind of taken over the world. But now we're in season 7, and this is the most interesting part of it, because most people know that the series has now surpassed the books. So when I watch when I watch the series, if someone who has read the book several times, it is now just fascinating to me, because I don't know what is going to be in the books when he finally releases them, what they have changed just for the TV show, maybe what's in both. Like sometimes these things that they're creating for the TV show could be created just for television, and it's just really strange and interesting. But season 7 for me has been kind of, I'll say this, it has been incredibly engrossing, magical. Me and my girlfriend sit down every Sunday and we watch Game of Thrones. It is like tradition for us. The downside has been that because there's only 7 episodes, it's been feeling a little bit rushed to me. And I don't know, I read a really great article about it the other day, and I'm sorry I don't have it on hand to quote it, but I kind of agreed with it, because especially in the last episode, episode 5, they did so much to try and move the plot along. Gendry just comes out of nowhere with his warhammer, and now he's part of the crew, and Jaime Lannister and Tyrion finally meet up, which should have been one of the most epic like confrontations that we've been waiting for in the series, and it was just like a really quick sort of interaction that felt a little bit rushed. There was people acting in kind of in strange ways, like the way Cersei responded to finding out that Jaime had that meeting with Tyrion and that she actually knew about it but didn't try to stop it, despite the fact that we all know she would kill Tyrion the second she had a chance to. People are starting to act in kind of unrealistic ways. It feels like it's forcing its hand. Like at the beginning of the season, there was this episode where they did this really weird thing in the show where they decided to split off the Greyjoys. So on one hand, you had Euron Greyjoy basically split off and try to chase down his family. And that was just a strange thing. Like he's chasing down Theon and his sister, and it was weird that they basically split off the Greyjoys only to have so they could give Euron a way to come back into the story and capture them or attack them. It just felt very artificially created for television. Now, I don't know if the books are going to end up doing that, but for those of you that read the books, there's characters like Victarion that are in the book, that are in the Greyjoy line, that is like this great warrior, and he, last in the books, was going toward Daenerys, and he's not even in the show at all. So there's things that I see in the show that just feel constructed for television, and I know that they have to do that, so I try not to get too hung up on it. I know that sometimes that's the way things have to be. It's feeling a little bit rushed and a little artificial at times, and on occasion I'm seeing characters act in a way that doesn't feel earned. Having said that, the last episode where there was this great battle with Daenerys and her dragon, and they attacked the Lannister army, and there was the most tense scene I've ever seen in television history for me personally, because Jaime Lannister in the books was like my favorite character, where he is flying on his horse, and you have that moment where Tyrion's watching him from the distance, and he's just like, don't be a fucking idiot, don't you fucking do it. And Jaime just says, fuck it, I can end this war, which is a very brave and kind of stupid move. And he just charges at a dead body, grabs a spear out of it, and he's just charging at Daenerys. And it's just this incredibly tense scene that ends with Bronn coming in and, of course, saving him and knocking him into the water just as the dragon's fire misses him. And even that was kind of crazy, because in the very next episode, Bronn has suddenly been able to drag Jaime Lannister out of the water, and all this body armor, he's like 40 feet underwater, and he's just dragging him out of the river, no problem. The more I talk about it, the more I get upset, and it sucks, because I love it so much. Like, this series means so much to me, and I love that the whole world is so entrenched in it, but it's hard not to get frustrated by some of these plot points that they didn't have to commit to. Like, why? You don't have a better reason for Jaime getting pulled for the water, despite being drenched in heavy armor and appears to be sinking to his death in the episode before, and Bronn just magically lifts him out. Just little things like that. Like, I don't want to sound too nitpicky, but you can't help but be kind of frustrated by it. Having said that, a lot of the episodes have leaked, and the next episode leaked, and a lot of people that I know have watched the leaked episode, and it's just been frustrating because I have to avoid all the spoilers everywhere. And by the time this video posts, I may have already seen the next episode where something supposedly crazy happens. It seems like it's going to center a lot around like Jon Snow and his new posse, with the Hound and Beric Dondarrion, as they're now beyond the wall again, because they have this very strange plot to bring one of the White Walkers back to prove to Cersei that it's not just a fairy tale. It's weird. It's getting a little weird. We'll see how it goes. I'm just trying to remain hopeful. I would be lying if I said I wasn't incredibly entertained every week anyway, despite those things, because HBO is still doing something that nobody else in television is doing with Game of Thrones. I don't see why they couldn't have done 8 or 9 or 10 episodes. Like, if you're going to cut the season short, you don't want to leave the viewers thinking that it's rushed. Because then you're like, well, why was this a 7-episode season and it still feels rushed, right? So that whole thing kind of rubs me the wrong way. But we'll see how it goes. That's been kind of running around my head a lot lately. I've been playing a lot of No Man's Sky, which I know is kind of a hot topic around the internet these days. And on our podcast, the Chompcast, they're sick of hearing me talk about it. But that game, I always try to analyze why I love No Man's Sky so much, and maybe why everyone else seems to dislike it so much. Now, it has turned around quite a bit. I've been reading a lot of the Steam reviews and just the general media since they released the update 1.3, and I've been really excited to see that people have really come around on No Man's Sky. Sorry, that was me fixing my fucking screensaver on my computer. Things you gotta learn. But it's one thing I was going to mention too. This is not going to be one of those YouTube channels with lots of cutaways where they try to do all those clever, like, say one thing, cutaway, say another thing, cutaway, say another thing, cutaway, say another thing, cutaway. Like that frantic ADD nature. It's just not going to be one of those kind of channels. So I'm sorry. Anyways. One of the things about No Man's Sky is I noticed like it's got a lot of positive momentum now, which has been really cool. Like both from the reviews and then after the 1.3 update, seeing people come back to the game. It's got all this story content, and I've been trying the story content out, and it's actually been pretty interesting, which surprised me. I had this weird moment last night where when I used to play No Man's Sky, I liked it. I loved it a lot last year, but I admit that it was a very sort of base level experience. I loved it because I would just fly to all these randomly generated planets and just kind of look around at the beautiful world. There was just enough survivalism elements so it didn't burden me too much. And it was just always like, what am I going to find? Like I'd land on a planet and find some crazy space sharks or some giant alien bird that was attacking me as soon as I got out of my spaceship. And every new world was like unwrapping a new pack of trading cards when you were a kid. You know, there's 18 quintillion planets and they're all randomly generated. And I was just in love with seeing what they were going to produce, as well as the fact that the game was just peaceful and relaxing, and the music from 65 Days of Static was just incredible. And they did some really interesting things with the music to make it more dynamic with your randomized adventure. So I loved No Man's Sky for what it was, but it was a very lonely game. And it was very weird. Last night I was playing No Man's Sky and I was like, wow. I had all these quests going on at one time. I had like 3 quests in my base because I started doing the base building stuff for the first time with like the scientist and the exocraft specialist, and then I had my main story mission that was in space, and I had a couple points of interest on the map, and I was looking around like, I have too many fucking things to do. Like before, the problem was I didn't have enough to do. Now I'm like this beautiful feeling of having almost too much to do. Like every time I complete a quest, they give me another one, or I go do a little bit of the story and come back, and then on top of that, I have the freedom to go and do whatever I want. And that's such a weird feeling in No Man's Sky. But it's really pulled me back in. If it was just more of the same, I don't think I would have been able to get back into No Man's Sky, even though I really enjoyed it for what it was the first time I played it. But everything they've added to the game has just been incredible, along with a lot of the minor improvements. I will say one funny thing that happened to me, I had this really beautiful planet. I named it Zephyrus, and basically it was like a kind of a frozen-y planet, but it had these really deep, beautiful, lonely oceans with these like alien space sharks in there, and I loved it. It was like my favorite planet. And so I named the planet. I ended up flying back to this planet after the update dropped, and it had completely changed because I guess Hello Games had to, in order to make all the planets more interesting with all the updates and changes, they had to redesign or change the algorithm enough to where the planets were adjusted. So like I went back to that planet, there was no space. It was beautiful, but there was no space sharks. A lot of the creatures that I had scanned and discovered a name before were gone. And I just don't quite... It's a tough thing because I felt like I was almost punished for being an early adopter of the game. I discovered this place. I named it. It was mine. I went back to it, and it was completely different. So I hope they don't do that anymore because that's not cool. That is not cool, Hello Games. You're fucking with my shit. And it kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. But I think that was just in the process of getting to where they are now. Hopefully we will never see that again. You can't do that. You can't just keep fucking with people's planets. It's not cool. But I'm still playing that game religiously. On the Chompcast in a couple weeks, we're going to talk about Sonic Mania. That is the next game I'm really excited to play. But I got to get this No Man's Sky out of my system. It's been like long, crazy stretches where I'm just losing so much time to that game now. And it's really makes me happy to see how far that game has come and how much it has improved over time. So I am one of the people that really love No Man's Sky, and this just makes me really happy to see all the changes. And just warms my heart that one day Sean Murray will be able to leave his house and not get death threats. He'll be able to show his face at a new E3 and maybe even announce a new game without the whole world just completely discrediting everything he has to say. I think that's the story of No Man's Sky turning around has definitely warmed my heart as of late. And yeah, I guess that's mostly it. We just did a Pokemon podcast that was a lot of fun that we just posted, and that was such an amazing show. We had a great guest from the Rare Candy podcast, which is a Pokemon specific podcast, and it was so rare that we get to just talk about Pokemon for an hour and a half. And we talked about shiny Pokemon. As you can see from my setup here, I'm a huge Pokemon fan, even though I've kind of drifted away from it recently just because like Sun and Moon didn't really grab me. It's been more just kind of the same thing. But it got me thinking about why there isn't more ecosystems in video games. Like, Pokemon is one of the few ecosystems that are still around, which is strange to me, right? Like, the world of Pokemon, on the surface level, people just see these cute creatures that are just adorable, and they battle each other in this bright and silly world that people probably associate with a children's game, and then they wonder, why are there all these adults that still love Pokemon? Is it all just nostalgia? Well, one of the things that always hooked me really deeply into the Pokemon franchise, even as an adult, was the fact that it's a living, breathing ecosystem. Like, if you go to catch a Pikachu, it's going to have a different gender. It's going to have a very specific nature. It's going to have hidden statistics just for that Pikachu that affect how it trains, how it levels up. It could even, if you're really, really lucky, you could catch Pikachu that's a different color, which basically is sort of like akin to a deformity, but it's basically a different color Pokemon that's incredibly rare, like 1 in 8,000 random encounters. And the way the Pokemon interact in the world, like when you read the Pokédex, it tells you about how the Pokemon interact with each other. They've taken the time to make Pokemon an ecosystem that's just incredible. And I was just surprised that more games don't do that. Like, why aren't there more games that have created these sort of biological ecosystems in video game format where you can, like, when I play No Man's Sky a lot, I wish when I could scan the animals that I had someone on my base that was in like a scientist who dealt with animal discoveries, and you could like breed them out. So like everything in No Man's Sky is like a random combination of something, right? But imagine if you could like scan things on your planet, and then they had you go on a mission where you go out there on your little dune buggy thing, and you would, suck some DNA or whatever out of a creature from your planet, and then you take it back to your scientists, and they could take components of that and breed it with another animal. So you get all these randomly generated things that you bred out that are specific to things, the DNA from your planet. And you could have like a little farm where you grow the creatures, you could release them to the wild and see what they do. Like, the one thing I'd love to see it's funny that these two topics are connected. I didn't even think about that before I started recording this video, but if No Man's Sky could find a way to incorporate like a more of an ecosystem, instead of just scanning an animal that's cool to see that I'm learning a little bit about it, and then that's pretty much it. If they could find a way to incorporate more of like those ecosystem elements into the game and add some player control to it, like maybe breeding or science, like being able to take them back to your base and do experiments on them and things like that, I think that's one layer that the game could really benefit from. Now that I think about it, that would be another way to get me incredibly addicted to the game again in like a year if they're still updating it. It's going to be weird to see what No Man's Sky looks like in 3 to 5 years, for sure. But yeah, so I just was surprised that there's not more ecosystems like Pokemon out there. There's not a lot of in-depth biological ecosystems incorporated into video games, and that's too bad, because I think that people miss the fact that that's one of the reasons why Pokemon is so popular, especially if you find a way to add some sort of combat or incredible gameplay around those ideas. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the first video. I think I've got enough off my chest for now. As usual, like I said, I am the host of the Chompcast, which is a fantastic gaming podcast. I will put the link in the description below, as well as you can follow us on the Sword Chomp Instagram at Sword Chomp, at Sword Chomp Twitter. So you can see that plaque back there. That's, what I live for every day is growing the Sword Chomp community. So I hope you enjoyed this video, the first official video in Morgan's Madness. Hopefully they'll get better and more natural and more fluid and fun from here. But I'm excited to make more of these. I'm excited with the new setup that we have. I think it looks really cool. And yeah, thanks for watching.